Greetings from New York. Of the original 13 colonies, it was the 11th to ratify the U.S. Constitution, and it did so on July 26, 1788. With 19.3 million residents, it ranks third in population. Even though the state legislature meets in Albany, it's impossible to begin any discussion about New York, the state, without starting here, New York, the city. A city so grand, it's actually made up of 5 counties called boroughs.
So it's really 5 counties. In America, mostly cities are within counties. But in New York City, it's the reverse. There are 5 counties that are within the city.
New York has 8.5 million, 9 million people.
Everybody's in a mission to do their thing. They don't want to be sidetracked, right? I mean, you can see 1 million people a day, but only speak to 2.
Living in these crowds is a pleasant experience. New Yorkers are, without a doubt, the most mannerly people I've ever seen, anybody's ever seen.
In New York, you are both alone, but yet very surrounded. In New York, you can be anything you want, at any time you want. You are a New Yorker.
And you've got one other thing, the chance to make it, to do something. You come here for yourself, you come here to make it. And there's a shot, someplace in this city, there's a shot.
And that's created by the harbor in Manhattan and the surrounding waterways in upstate New York.
The Hudson River is not only the principal river in the state, it is one of the most important commercial waterways in America. The Hudson stretches over 300 miles, from New York Harbor nearly to the Canadian border. For a time, it runs alongside the breathtaking Adirondack State Park, a state park that is actually larger than any national park outside of Alaska. To the west, you'll find the oldest state park in the nation at Niagara Falls. It forms part of a 445-mile border with Canada. New York is also the #2 apple-growing state in America and is the largest producer of wine on the East Coast. But in the larger world of commerce and culture, the city of New York is second to none.
It is the center of American business, the center of American fashion. In some ways, the center of advertising, the center of the theater, the center of art, the center of music, the center of dance, certainly in an American sense and arguably in a world sense.
What makes New York feel like home is its vibrancy, its heterogeneity. There are so many different kinds of people here.
New York has everyone. I mean, from Estonians to Ukrainians to Jamaicans to Irish. There is no group that's not in New York City. And the #7 subway has been called the International Express because every stop is a different country.
Bien, երկն դեպտես ես ինյամ անասն դա.
Me gusta Nueva York porque aquí está todo.
New York City is but the gateway to the Empire State. The journey inland became much easier in 1807, when Robert Fulton's steamship, the Clermont, made its maiden voyage from New York City to Albany. Just down the road from the state capitol during the War of 1812, one Sam Wilson provided large shipments of meat to the U.S. Army. Wilson's meat barrels were stamped with the initials U.S. Supposedly, someone who saw the stamp suggested, perhaps as a joke, that the initials stood for Uncle Sam. One thing led to another, and ultimately, Uncle Sam came to symbolize the federal government. This was not the first time New York played a significant role in American political life.
George Washington was sworn in as president at the lower tip of Manhattan.
Before there was a New York State or a New York City, there was New Amsterdam, set up by the Dutch as a merchant colony. Its most famous early governor was a peg-legged Dutch businessman named Peter Stuyvesant.
The Dutch founded New York to make money. People would say New York is still about making money. It's not about gracious living, it's not about easy living. And that trend was set 400 years ago by the Dutch, who established a trading post at the foot of Manhattan Island and called it New Amsterdam.
New Amsterdam became New York when the English came in 1664 with a modest invasion fleet that was enough to overcome the thought of Dutch resistance. The local Dutch citizens did not want to fight, and Peter Stuyvesant, with great reluctance, surrendered the colony.
And so they kind of march out with bands playing and flags flying, but march out they do, and it changes to British ownership, and the name is changed from New Amsterdam to New York.
Once New York City was established, the colonists turned their gaze to the west.
The Erie Canal was incredibly significant in westward expansion, not just in New York, but in the Ohio country and the Great Lakes and beyond.
The building of the Erie Canal created the equivalent of an aquatic superhighway. Waterborne cargo could enter New York Harbor, go up the Hudson River, and then, via the canal, cut across the entire state and into Lake Erie.
It was the principal conduit for the movement of people and goods and raw materials east-west and west and east. It had enormous significance in the building up of cities along its route.
Cities like Rochester, Syracuse, and Buffalo became important industrial towns as a result of the canal, which was constructed at a cost to the state of over $7 million. This investment was quickly recouped by collecting tolls from vessels using the canal. The original Erie Canal remained in active use for 80 years and brought economic boom times to upstate New York, which had plenty of room to spread out. For New York City, however, there was nowhere to go but up.
The streets were laid out east and west, and the avenues were laid out north and south. The gridiron prohibited building horizontally, and so I would suggest that the beginning of the skyline of New York dates from that gridiron plan.
Beginning in the Roaring '20s, New York witnessed a skyscraper competition. 40 Wall Street reached up to 70 stories. The Chrysler Building came in at 77 stories. The Empire State Building, built in 1931, won the contest at 102 stories and over 1,000 feet high. In 1966, construction began on two new skyscrapers called the World Trade Center, which would reshape and invigorate Lower Manhattan.
By 1990, 25 of the 100 tallest buildings on the planet were in New York City. There is no concentration like that anyplace else on Earth. There's a historian who said that the skyline of New York is the most unbelievable man-made spectacle since the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Probably so.
Then came September 11th, 2001. The skyline and the psyche of New York City were changed forever.
I think by nature, New Yorkers are very tough, resilient people, and I think that they won't be deterred by terrorists or anything to continue our way of life.
The destruction of the World Trade Center was a terrible blow psychologically and financially for New York City, for New York State, for this country. But we're recovering from it. We will recover from it. We're New Yorkers.
Look here. I'm talking about America, sweet America.